got something to say, and I just want y'all to hear me talk. This definitely don't call for me to vent, but if it happens, it happens. But something I've just been thinking about, we talk about unconditional love and we talk about conditional love. I feel like I'm having a realization that hold on, let me just say this. So, we as human beings, we categorize things as good and bad, right? And something that I've already taken into consideration is that good and bad is subjective. There can't be darkness without light. And something I talk about in my podcast is the significance of balance and why balance is so important to have in your life. We can't find ourselves too far on either extreme of light, either extreme of dark. We find ourselves on the extreme of darkness, well, we're considered narcissists and toxic and all those popular trendy terms that we throw around nowadays. And then of course, if we are too extreme of the light, well, we're naive, we're gullible. We talk about conditional love as if it's a bad thing. But something I feel like I'm starting to come into realization about is, in a way, our love has to be conditional. Because why do we go our life learning certain lessons, like setting boundaries, for instance? And we talk about teaching people how to treat us, teaching people how to properly love us. Now, I've been through this phase where I was just like, I ain't trying to teach nobody nothing. They need to come, already with direction. They need to come. But that's kind of like I don't know, I feel like that's kind of like a distorted way of viewing it, because if we don't have certain conditions to ourselves, to what we are willing to accept from another person, place, or thing, then we are in a way setting both ourselves and the other person, place, or thing up for failure in a way. And so I think it's just best that maybe we look at it from the perspective that, not trying to categorize as good or bad, but embracing it. It's the same concept as embracing the shadow aspects of yourself. I also talk about this in one of my podcast episodes. Y'all need to go listen to my podcast. I talk about this in my podcast. It's the same concept as embracing your shadow aspect, the dark side of yourself, the things that we try to suppress, and the things about our personality that people in the world has deemed as bad. And so we've gone our life trying to hide those aspects of ourselves, but we have to embrace those things. We have to accept those aspects of ourselves, because when we embrace the good and the bad, let's just put it that way, when we embrace the good and the bad things about ourselves, that is how we find wholeness within ourselves, rather than trying to make yourself feel complete or whole through the connection of another person. place, or thing, whatever the case may be, you can become whole just as yourself. Although, yes, you can say, well, I don't have a person to make me feel as if my life is fully complete. But that, in a way, is still like a distorted way of looking at things, because wholeness is internal, and you can only feel whole within yourself when you have embraced every aspect of yourself. That is self-love. That is self-acceptance. And so, in a way, it's like, yes, we want to have unconditional love, because especially for us religious individuals, one thing that, they say, that they quote quite often is, love thy neighbor, and love thy enemy. It's no different when you are looking at it from a lens of looking at yourself. You have to accept all aspects of yourself, the good, the bad, the ugly, the pretty, the beautiful, however you want to look at it. That is unconditional love. Because you can't say you unconditionally love someone if you don't accept every aspect of that person. It's like sometimes we find ourselves in like this fairy tale. Again, it's like it's a state of delusion. Now, I'm not saying delusion is bad, because we need delusion. We need to have a level of delusion to ourselves in order to create the life that we truly desire for ourselves. But what I'm essentially saying is you can love a person for all the positive things about them, but you also, in a way, have to embrace the things that you may deem as not acceptable, or you may deem as like bad, ugly, whatever the case may be. But this is where the conditional aspect comes in at. Now, yes, conditional love has been given a bad reputation. Why? Because, well, some of us have been raised in homes where the love was conditional to the far extreme of toxic, right? Your mom, your dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever, they influenced you to feel as if you had to earn their love. You had to, and not to say that love isn't to be earned, okay? Because if you go into a relationship with somebody, that person has to earn. It is to be earned. Trust is to be earned. Respect is to be earned. These things are to be earned, not just automatically given. But some of our backgrounds have reflect that in our upbringings, those things had to be given, right? Or we had to do certain things. We had to overgive. We had to make ourselves small in order for other people to feel big and to feel whole and to feel good about themselves. So that's where we find ourselves on the far extreme of conditional love. Whereas we wasn't taught a fresher perspective of conditional love. Now, just because you have unconditional love for a person, meaning, yes, you accept them as a whole. You accept the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful. That does not mean you have to tolerate those things, the ugly, the beautiful, well, primarily the ugly, the bad, right? That is where you set conditions, boundaries. And if that person is willing to meet you in the middle with respect, meet you in the middle with maturity, I think that is where then a healthy and a well-balanced connection can be developed. Damn, I feel like I'm going down a rabbit hole with this. that's just my take on it. That's just my take on it. I feel like I'm coming into this realization between the whole concept of unconditional love, 6-7, sorry, the whole concept of unconditional love and conditional love. It's okay to unconditionally love someone, because in a way you have to unconditionally love yourself. You have to love the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, and you have to be willing to do the same for another person. However, just because you have unconditional love for another person, place, or thing, it does not mean you have to tolerate those aspects about that person. It's not so much about forcing that person to change, because that person has to be willing to do that on their own terms. You can't force a person to change. You can't force a person to be who you want them to be. That's just not how this works. But you have to set conditions, and this does not have to be just for romantic. This could be for platonic, friendships as well. You can love, your best friend or whoever unconditionally. But just because you love a person unconditionally, it does not mean you have to tolerate the bad, the ugly about them. You set the boundaries. You set the tone for what it is you will and will not accept. But that does not mean that your perspective or your love, the way you treat that person, the way you approach that person, the way you come into union with that person, doesn't mean that is to be changed, that is to be shifted. I hope this makes sense to me. I hope it's making sense to somebody. But that's just, yeah, that's just something that's been heavy on my mind. And that's all I gotta say. Peace.